Welcome, data enthusiasts. I'm Joseph of Zuma Recruitment, and we are the consultancy focused 100% on data professionals in and around the Berlin region. And this is our podcast, Data for Good, connecting you with all topics and all things data. Today, happy to be joined by Dominique Vandamme. Dominique is Director of Data at ARIVE. ARIVE offers an e-commerce consumer product platform based on localized and eco-friendly warehousing and delivery options. Dominique, awesome company that you've joined more recently. How's life in data at ARIVE and how's it going for you today?
Well, today, like we're almost wrapping up the week, so this might actually be the last thing I'm doing for the week. Data at ARIVE is like it's a very interesting and fast-moving journey, as you can imagine, for a startup in general, also for a startup in the current market. Lots of different things to do. I only joined about 8 to 9 months ago. Built like the whole data infra from scratch. Build out the data team, the function in itself, covered all grounds that needed covering, like data engineering, analytical things. And working towards all different departments, which I kind of like in a broader collaboration setting. So classical e-commerce operations, because we do our own logistics. Obviously, everything product facing, where you're building data products. Then, yeah, so very interesting, very diverse.
Fantastic. And although you've not been there since the beginning of time, you have helped to build out their data architecture and infrastructure. So that's something that you can really be proud of and also speak to your experience of or in. And particularly interesting, I find today's topic because it goes against the grain, as we say in English. The limitations of data-driven decision-making. Tell me, what do you mean by this, and why is this an important topic for you?
Yeah, of course, as much as I think our expertise is needed to collect, ingest, model data, analyze things, interpret, forecast, all other aspects of the job that we tend to talk about regularly in blogs, podcasts, read about, and how we also write our job descriptions, so to say. I think we also have a responsibility to speak out where data should not be used to guide decisions, because, well, we are, so to say, we are the experts in our field. So we are the ones who can also take the decision, take a stance on where it's responsible or not responsible anymore to take a decision based on data, or to use the tools that we as data scientists, as data teams are providing. So while this might be a rough talking point for a data podcast, I understand. And usually I be the person that's supposed to be selling anything data related. I still think it's a very, very important topic, and happy to draw some analogies and bring up examples that make this a bit clearer.
Definitely. And when you say we shouldn't use data to make all decisions, who is the we? Who are we referring to? Are we talking about the analysts? Are we talking about the departmental teams that use that data?
Actually, I'm referring to the collaboration between data experts, so to say, data analysts, data scientists, machine learning engineers, whoever is guiding the project from the data side of things and is interfacing with business stakeholders. So I wouldn't capture the full collaboration. So both sides of the equation actually play a role there, and both, but it's us in this collaboration to carry that responsibility. Why I think that's really important, because I've seen or I've experienced in the past that there's lots of demand for data to help in decision making naturally. That's our job, so to say. But we are also the ones who have the expertise in telling when there's reasonable data, when there's a reasonable foundation to apply our tools, when the tool set some business stakeholder heard about and would like to employ is actually not suitable for a solution, or other things to say. So just to give a couple of examples, and then on this, but having this conversation with the stakeholder is also a very challenging one, because someone's actually asking us to do our job, so to say. Someone's valuing the input we usually give. They're coming to us because they need help to take a decision, and they ask us to do it with the tools we have at hand in the area that we usually are really good at, and then we are saying them. We are giving a no as an answer. We're saying it's not suitable. So we're communicating actually a negative response before even getting to work. Still, I think this is why I think it's a very critical and sensible topic and to navigate in.
Hey, have you been in a situation where you have turned down those operational stakeholders and you've said it's not appropriate? Do it yourself kind of thing.
Do it yourself is actually an interesting part of the answer, because I think that's sometimes part of the thing, really part of that situation. Definitely. I mean, I wouldn't bring it up otherwise. Plus, I guess everyone has. It's part of our job, and if we don't do it right, I think we're not doing our job right. But if I could give examples. I mean, I have a couple of examples there where these usually occur, and I think it's easy to start with an example that's very common and has where I think it kind of comes natural to lots of data people, and that's A/B testing. Often A/B testing was very, very popular a couple of years ago. I think it still is. Maybe the tide has turned a bit on it, so to say. Still, it's seen as a valuable tool for very good reasons by product stakeholders. And then a very common answer that is actually part of our classical tool set coming from experimental statistics is that one answer would be given our current traffic levels, detecting the anticipated change would take about 2.5 years. Whereas, and this is what you're confronting a product stakeholder with. And this is actually a prime example of such a situation where someone would love to use the tool sets we're giving and use our help, and we're saying, well, but it won't work. You just can't apply it here for very solid statistical reasons. So this is actually, when I'm talking about this topic, this is the example I like to start out with, because this is it's such a common situation, and it kind of resonates hopefully well with everyone who's listening.
So specifically A/B testing, and in this case, actually seeing the results from A/B testing would take several years and therein be obsolete and not useful several years later.
Yep.
A point that I come back to, the very title of this topic, the limitations of data-driven decision making. Data is seen sometimes as a hindrance. We have all these people stakeholders that work with data, and myself included, we come to rely on the data rather than making the decision ourselves. Do you believe that to be true? Do you think I could be guilty of that, or people like me? Letting the data dominate the decision rather than using one's intuition and gut instinct.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes into the direction of another area where I see this occurring, which I'm usually try to headline as strategic decisions, where my natural response in these situations is like, well, this is just strategy, not just this is strategy, and this can be a strategic decision. And I've often told business stakeholders in the past, like, well, this 100% follows from the overall business vision or the strategy we defined in there. Why not take the decision based on this? And then to give but then if there's still the question or still the demand to justify or to find signs in the data, then usually in these fields, it's like if your business is pivoting into a different business direction, if you're entering a completely new market that you never covered, usually you might actually be much better off with not relying on the data you're having, because it just doesn't extrapolate well. to the field you're going into.
But then,
so this is where I would say,
But sorry to interrupt. Maybe a slight delay. Not my intention to interrupt you. I'm thinking if it's the example of being a completely new market, wouldn't that infer that your intuition is also not powerful? You'd just be guessing.
Well, it depends. Well, maybe then my definition of a data-driven decision is a bit of a stricter one in this context. Naturally, for a business stakeholder, a data-driven decision could also be to get some market intelligence report that tells you about this, whatever, the US market in your specific consumer segment, and you can draw conclusions out of that. What I'm referring to here is usually what data teams are dealing with, and this is larger numerical data sets, more or less gathered internally, maybe enriched with external data, but drawn out of or gathered throughout the history of the business history of the company you're working in. Where one would try to then apply this to another market, where we would say like, well, it's a completely uncovered territory. Let's and we already took the decision to go there. Let's just follow the strategy in this case.
Yeah.
So
yeah. No. I also, when we look at countries, I think of the human experience and how, as a human, you have a cultural understanding of what maybe other cultures might react or respond, and you can even ask stakeholders rather than asking the data. I'm also thinking, I don't mean to take our conversation in this direction, and we really don't need to at all. But I also think about how the introduction of AI, this is about just plugging data into algorithms and letting the algorithms make the decisions and make the predictions for us. And really, then the AI and the algos are making all those decisions. I wonder if that's a factor for concern, and could even be the main thrust of your argument.
Well, didn't really elaborate it in that direction too far. I think where it could definitely play a role is like applying such algorithms on fields they haven't been trained on. There's certainly efforts to do there. There's transfer learning as a whole new, even as a complete like research direction that does these kind of things, and it works reasonably well in some examples. But that would probably be something where similar guidance from data experts would be given and saying like, hey, I would be very cautious of applying these techniques in the particular field you're looking at, because we just haven't tested it there, for example. Maybe just to kind of steer it back to a more concrete hands-on day-to-day data science topic. I think where I've also experienced it in the past is forecasting time series analysis, a topic I'm really interested in. Also, I think a topic that like didn't get too much love from the data and machine learning community in the last years, but I've seen this changing because it's so important for businesses. But then whenever you look at examples there, or a lot of the stuff in the literature is very idealized and you have a longer history of data to draw from, where I would say 80% of people in tech companies are working in companies that do not have a 10 or 15 years of a constant history of their business operating in different markets that they could build on. So we often this is where we encounter something where you would also need to reject anything in terms of forecasting, because you're just looking at a year and a half of history. Your company's doing great, but it's just going through the roof. It's changing its business model every second week or refining on it. So there's too much external influences changing things than such a model could pick up on, for example. Classical example.
Okay. So forecasting time series, that's one area. Okay. And incidentally, an area that is often in demand from the heads of data and the directors of data and data managers that we work with. They want people that come from that background, of course, right?
Mm. Yeah, and I think there's lots of interesting business problems to solve, and I'm not saying like, and I think probably a large share of the work being done there is very legitimate. It's just we're also at this intersection that business stakeholders has heard of something like this being applied at a competitor or another company, and then you need a cross check with the exact kind of data you have at hand. Is a particular application of this, or that's kind of related to time series and forecasting, is marketing mix modeling. I don't know if you came across it. I think it kind of it has been around for a couple of years, I think, but it gained more prominence now with the introduction of like the Apple privacy changes. So now it's really hard to track individual customers and where you acquired them. So you kind of do like look at your broad history of marketing activities, combine it with the outcomes over time, and then try to see which channels are working. That's like the very rough idea of marketing mix modeling.
Okay.
And this is getting lots of traction in the last weeks and months, I would say, for very good reason. It's a very solid technique. Just when you look at like an open source implementation of it once released by Facebook or Meta called Robin, and then you go into the documentation and someone's brought it up with you like, hey, shouldn't we apply this? You look at it and it's like, yeah, it requires a minimum of 2 years of data, recommending like in the direction of 4 to 5 years. So you would actually need to have set up data collection 2, 4, 5 years back and collected everything in a constant format, not changing, hopefully without any major interruptions, in a more or less stable business environment. So that's already telling you about the challenges that you would need to face for such things, where then the natural answer would be like, yeah, well, have we even been around that long? What did we change? Think of the last 4 or 5 years, what they're actually like most business environments have been completely disrupted. So what are you going to do with like with the lockdown phases and your historical data? Is that really going to help you explain your day-to-day marketing decisions you're taking now?
Of course, there's so many people from the analytics and data science field that cite that whole block of time as being completely useless in terms of them being able to generate meaningful insights. And the same could be said for any startup business who's not been around for that long. So seemingly a recurring theme here is time. What other limitations do you think there are to data-driven decision making?
Well, I think time is one. Of course, the A/B testing example in the kind of then went towards the timers are, and essentially it's more about a volume. It's about the daily volume of visitors you're getting, like how big is the population you can put into your A/B test on every single day, how many see your feature variations. So then time volume is one thing. And then I think this generalizability, like how much can you infer from the experiences you made in the past? Experience as like a wider term to your business activities, where you had your business running, where you got feedback on the data streams you're getting, and how can you apply this to other fields, which I would probably list as like another area there.
Yeah. I might also comment on the volume. I'm thinking of the Salesforce environment that I used to work in. We were able to grasp, as non-data professionals, we were able to take lots of different data sources, and we had so much data, we literally didn't know what to do with it. One might argue that, because there was an abundance, if we were to choose one source of data as a guiding truth, it might take us in a wholly incorrect direction and lead to us making assumptions about that data. So yeah, volume is a very important factor.
Yeah, I mean true. So that's like the that's the different kind of sources might even be another topic there, where you have like different data sources telling complete opposite versions of the same story, that can guide you into different directions. So I would, in that case, I would assume it's probably, well, like the way I bring up this topic is more that this happens, or the intervention I'm suggesting here is happening before even going into the data. That there are clear signs in the data at hand, the data quality you're having, that tell you before that this is not a project which is most likely giving any success. This is not a project which is going to help the business drive forward. So you need to take this hard decision before embarking on the journey and rejecting a request from a stakeholder, neglecting to do the work. While there's several conflicting informations, might actually be something that arises after the fact, once you've done your analysis and you've hopefully been someone who knows the data situation at hand and this uncovered most of these sources. What I'm arguing about here is this, like taking this stance before, and I see this as an essential part of our job. That it's our job, as well as it's our job to look at data and analyze and do things and build predictive models. I think it's also our job to educate and our job to steer resources in the right direction, which in this case would mean not to embark on some analytical or predictive journey, given insufficient data at hand, for example.
That takes some strength of mind, and I should imagine some very strong commercial understanding from the data professional involved in that, being able to say, this is not the direction that we should go in. It's not the direction we should invest our time in. That's a good piece of advice. What other measures do you think, or what other I don't want to say decisions, but what other things should data professionals do so as not to just casually start using data as the golden factor for decision making?
Well, I think, or I would assume, or at least that's my experience with working like different data professions over the course of my career, that usually there is this, and coming back to the intuition you stated, there is this data intuition in the professionals working with. So actually the knowledge, or the knowledge about the fact that this might not be a good project to embark on, might be there. So it's more about the communication aspect of things. It's more about this requesting a demand from another business stakeholder, while still understanding their motivation to approach the data team with such a project proposal, and as something that has like a genuinely positive intention behind it. They learned us to be valuable partners to them comparable situation. Maybe not to us. Maybe to us it's a completely different situation we're in. So that's why it's natural for them to turn to us as a data team now. I would, at least in my experience, I think usually data people then have the right intuition of that this not being feasible. It's more, to me, it's more about the communication aspect, the communicative aspect of things, navigating an organization, navigating in some aspects also the politics of an organization. Turning down a project, does that entail like getting lower dedicated resources in the near or mid future? Stuff like this. Yeah.
Okay. I feel like I might be going backwards in the conversation here, given that we've already started to figure out ways to challenge getting involved in projects unnecessarily. But data storytelling, this is an area where data can be manipulated, data can send us down the wrong path and can lead to us making the wrong decisions. What are your thoughts on this, and maybe overcoming the limitations that arise from data storytelling?
Yeah, it's an interesting take. I think let me answer that first, and then I'll give like a more positive aspect of data storytelling in this context. But getting to your actual question first, I guess, or I would even go so far in saying that this data storytelling as a tool to, well, misdescribe the data situation at hand might often arise from such situations, that you committed on a project where actually it's really hard to give reasonable recommendations based on the data at hand, but then you still initially recommended to the project, you committed a week or two of resources to it, working on it, then it's way harder in the end to say, well, actually, there's really nothing we can say, which might be tempt you to, well, go into the negative direction of data storytelling and trying to squeeze the little or noisy data you're having to get something out of your model or get something out of your analytical story.
Quite literally like a story, a fictional story.
Yep. Might also arise in that strategic situation where an organization understands itself as data-driven, while the decision has already been taken or the strategic journey has been set, and then you're just post factum actually trying to give reasons for why this was the right decision. I promised a more positive version of it, and that's, I think, this, you can still do something. You're in an ideal world, your job is not only to say no, no, you should actually say no because, and this is where you can use data storytelling and really illustrate people going back, because I was talking about time series before, going back and really bring people closer to the data you have at hand. Show them a time series, show them how lockdown 1, 2, and 3 completely killed all kind of trend in the business development. Show them how the important product changes really influenced how people are using your product, and make it so kind of rendering like lots of your data history having unusable. Stuff like this can very well be illustrated. Stuff like this can very well be used in data storytelling kind of fashion, to convince your stakeholders that you're not just saying no because you're scared or you're even lazy because you don't want to do the project, but because you have very valid doubts about the application of data in this context.
Here's something. Data-driven decision-making has led to massive growth in companies, data teams and tech teams and operational teams globally. And then, largely that was based on lockdowns and the pandemic. And now, as a result, forecasts from data are not as strong. And globally, and specifically Berlin, we've seen mass layoffs as well. So perhaps that is a harsh but real example of how data-led decisions has had macro negative impacts.
Might be.
You don't want to speculate on this.
I wouldn't want to. I'm happy to happy for you to do so. I'm not exactly sure. It might very well be the reason. Could be. Just not. Yeah. Don't want to commit to it, so to say.
No, fair enough. I've heard quotes around predictions and forecasts being reasons for why companies made decisions to hire so many people and how that was wrong. Okay.
Well, in some context, obviously, it is given like given the financial or like the venture capital financial situations of the last couple of years that were reasonable forecasts, and then this, well, for some expected change, of course, happened. For others, like the Black Swan event, whatever happened, and it changed things. And that, so yeah, in that, following that reasons, definitely forecasting was involved there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We've run out of time. You've given us some really strong considerations around the limits of data-driven decision making. I wonder if there's any final thoughts from you to add on this topic.
I think we've covered it pretty well. I think it might be a reasonable thing. To end it with like that. I mean, data science or leading data teams is my job, so I thoroughly enjoy applying all these techniques. I see this part of pointing out the limitations is just a small but still very important part of a data professional's responsibilities, and that's why I wanted to put a bit of attention on it today.
I think wise to do so, and I come back to what is often a demand of us as recruiters, and that is for us to find people that are very strong technicians but have very strong commercial intuition, so that they are making decisions, perhaps as to what you referenced, making decisions before they engage in projects that could lead stakeholders to wrong decisions.
Yeah,
okay.
True. And then might be a really good career advice then.
Yes, yeah. Well, I'll certainly reference this in future conversations, and even point candidates in the direction of this pod. Yeah, great. Awesome. Dominique, thanks very much for your time. And I ask any viewers or listeners, if there are any today, to pose any questions or comments to Dominique. And yeah, I'm sure you'll get back to them swiftly. And yeah, see you all next time.
Cool. Yeah, thank you very much. Really good conversation. Enjoyed it very much. And yeah, awesome. Talk to you soon.
Very welcome. Yeah, talk to you soon. Thanks, Dominique.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.